Round 5 has been and gone, but there's always plenty to talk about in SuperCoach. A devastating blow for a star of the league. And if you jumped in on the PJC action, well, you would not be disappointed. Hello and welcome back to the panel, your official NBL SuperCoach show. I'm Kelsey Brown, and I had an unfortunate week in SuperCoach, but it is lucky that I am joined by the experts. James Clements, back again, SuperCoach wizard and best beard in this room. JC, how'd you go?
Jeez, take that.
That's a whack.
Absolute whack. How did I go this week? Look, I'm stoked to be here. I'm more stoked than a campfire, but at the same time, I think I used this last week. My team is still more cooked than one of my old man snaps. So it's absolutely shocking at this point. I did ride the PJC bandwagon though to a bit of glory. That completely saved my week, Kels. Outside of that, it's a horror show. It's basically Halloween coming up. Everyone's getting stuck into the Halloween spirit. That's just my SuperCoach team at this point. It's like Carrie, there's blood everywhere, it's chaos anyway.
And someone who did not ride the PJC bandwagon, you actually ended up going with D. Walt instead of that, is News Corp basketball writer Mick Randall. You're back with us again this week, but you've had an unfortunate week as well.
Kels, I said you weren't allowed to tell anyone this, okay? You know, look, my dad has a saying, do as I say, not as I do, and I hope people followed that last week because, yes, I faded PJC for those who follow me on Twitter, and it was a big mistake. I went for D. Walt, and I was sitting in John Cain Arena and watching as he went off, and got the text through from the media manager for the Phoenix. He's out for the game. So I'm like, okay, this is bad. Then it got to Monday, and I got another text from someone, and it said, oh, I think D. Walt's out for a few weeks, and I said, it just got worse. Yes,
it's been a bad week for you with guards, but another bad thing for guards across the league is the Bryce Cotton news. He obviously clocked a 0 in SuperCoach this week. 18% of teams stuck fat with him, and they wanted to ride the Bryce Cotton train. But yeah, it's unfortunate for him. The best thing is that we've got a lot of cash to spend now if you're going to get rid of Bryce Cotton. He's expected to be out for an amount of time, uncertain return date. But what are you going to do with that cash now that you've got it?
Well, 342k is a big chunk of coin. It's also a bit down on where he started, like 45k down. But it does mean you've got a lot of options, Kels. This is the fun part, Mick. I love this part because you just get to start listing all the top dudes. And you're like, oh, I can go that. I can go a bit of Xavier Cooks. What do you reckon? Have I got 60k in the bank? Let's find out. I think Cooks is probably your best opportunity. If you don't have Cooks, and I think in terms of the top 1% of Supercoaches, 91.5% of them already have Xavier Cooks. So if you're smart, you've already got him. If you're like me and you don't because you're an idiot, you should go to Cooks. So I think he's only in 38.4 total percent of teams as well. So I think Supercoaches should be looking very, very hard at Cooks because I don't think he's going to slow down anytime soon. Outside of that, I think there's some really interesting names you can throw out there for Bryce. King Daly for one of them, maybe. Because with Shaylee out for this week, it just opens that up for our man, the one true king of Maryborough. Matt Hurt is the other one, right? So if you can sort of swing some forward centres around as well, get Hurt in, I think basically he's my go-to and he's going to be my trade this week. He's at 366k at the moment. He's averaging 35.2. He hasn't dropped below 25 all season, right? And I think with Sam on a bunch of doubles for the next couple of weeks, I think they've got 3 straight to come. That's my go-to right there. My fascinating one. Would you roll the dice and go with Ty Webster?
Ooh.
After he absolutely shredded in Bryce's absence, he's at 198k. Oh boy, who's got the stones to roll with that one? Probably not me. I don't really like injury replacements when it comes to SuperCoach, especially the NBL as a rule. But if you want to free up some other cash to go elsewhere, maybe that's one to kick the tyres on. And Jaylen Adams is the obvious one too here, Mick. Like, I don't know, because with the injury cloud surrounding him anyway after last week, he's priced at 335k. It's an easy straight swap. And in an ideal world, you'd be like, bang, done. Pull the trigger, we're off. But it's not an ideal world, is it?
I was just about to say, we don't live in an ideal world. And aside from my Dirk Walton Jr. decision last week, I also sat there and pined over Jaylen Adams and thought, you know, he's on a double, might be ready for a bounce back. Got a bit of info through that he was going okay, and he goes down to Tasmania and in the warm-up looks really sore, and then in the game looks even sorer, and I think, it was just downhill from there. So I've sort of, tried to stay in touch with Sydney, and hearing that he practiced today, but he's 50-50 at best. So on the double, I think that we all need to be really careful and watch whether he does actually get on the court.
Yeah, I think that Jaylen Adams thing is definitely one to watch. I was down there for that game and there was a lot of wincing. He was quite ginger in that warm-up, so I think that is one to watch. He's not on our hot list, no surprises, but there are people that played in that game that are on that hot list. So we've got 3 Tassie players and we've got 2 New Zealand players. The New Zealand ones are obviously the ones that I want to talk about. PJC, no surprises there. But Matt Mooney is also on the hot list this week. He scored 71 at 297, 300. And Mick, I want to ask you, is Mooney someone that you trust going forward?
Trust? That's a big question. I think in the first game he was about 1 for 35 from deep, and in the second game I think he was like 7 for 10 or something. So streaky shooters, like I love them. I love watching them, and the shooters shoot right, but for SuperCoach, it just worries me.
Right, so Mick worries you, PJC excites you, JC.
I love it because, look, my favourite thing going into this week was like we're all on the PJC bandwagon.
Not all.
And like, I mean, you've got Mick going, look, I don't know, I'm going to fade PJC. And in the back of my brain, I'm like, look, he's travelled a lot, but he's also a little fella. He can just curl up in one of those trans-Pacific flights like my 5-year-old would, just have a bit of a nap. So he absolutely shreds, right? 85, he goes bang. I loved it. I had the captain on him. We said that last week, and just go smash. And obviously with the Tassie players, I mean, because they're on the double, like Milton Dorr bounced back in a big way. Moore, the Thrill Magnate, did a good job too. Jordan Crawford, though, that was the fun one. It was good to see him actually pop off. And you're like, yes, that's the one we remember. Love me a bit of Jordan Crawford. The big question going forward for Mooney, I think, will be like, can you trust yourself with PJC, who we feel like is a lock and load for the rest of the season almost, apart from the 2 weeks where they got singles. If you have Mooney as well, that becomes a really big SuperCoach pitfall. Yeah,
so we talked about Mooney and PJC being on the hot list, but I want to go back to you, JC, on the not list. You had Leaupepe and you've stuck with Leaupepe this whole time, have you not?
Leaupepe.
Leaving me flat, I'll tell you. He's just broken my heart time and time again. I'm just like, you're done. I've taken my team, I've taken my iPad, I've thrown into the sun. It's over. Like Leaupepe and he's gone. He had an absolute 2 games where it's just like, yes, roll gold, loving it, and then it's just completely fallen off a cliff, so he's breaking my heart.
Yeah, so Leaupepe was on the not list with 2. He's at 121, 100. Jonah Antonio, Leaupepe also on there, but the ones that I want to also talk about is Cam Oliver and Keanu Pinder. They've broken some people's hearts this week. Cam Oliver with 10 and Keanu Pinder scored 12, 293,000. Mick, what are you thinking about those 2?
Well, I also kept Cam Oliver, so I had a great week. A great week.
You've had a worse week than me.
Yes, indeed. But they're interesting, Sydney, with what they do with their front line. Obviously, Cooks is the lock and load one, but then, it can be Oliver or Tui or, any one of those kind of rotating group of bigs or wings that kind of come through with a big score. So I think I'm going to have to hold him this week, but I think because if I have to get off Adams and Walton and Junior, it's going to be very hard. But I think if you're in a position, even though he does have the 2 games, maybe you do try and free up some money and trade him for a Hurt or someone like that.
JC, what are your thoughts?
I mean, with the Oliver thing, this is it. We've got 6 teams on doubles this week, but I'm looking for doubles, right? I want the teams that are playing the doubles the week after as well. We've got a bunch of them, which is handy. You got New Zealand, you got Southeast Melbourne Magic Phoenix again. You've got United again, you got the Kings again. So Oliver's the sort of question we go, can you afford to side trade him to somebody else from the Kings or from United? And I think you can. I think you can use a boost this week. I think you can sideways trade if you really just want to essentially have a setup where if you've got that bonusy kind of trade that you were talking about there, Mick, the luxury trade, I'd be getting off Oliver right smart because I just feel like you're going to start shedding cash. It's going to get pretty bad. But if you're like me and you're like, I'm happy just to sit and wait. It's fine. He's got a double. He's got another double the following week. All I'm looking for this week is to have 5 starters on doubles and as much as my bench as I possibly can as well. That's all I'm aiming for. And if it has to be a boost that gets me there, I want to keep probably Space Cam there. Pinder's a fascinating one. The break even with 36. I'm waiting on him because they've got the single this week, then they've got 5 straight doubles, and then I'll be jumping on the Pinder train, I reckon, at least kicking the tyres on it. Well, trains don't really have tyres, do they? They've got wheels. I've got a 5-year-old who's like, this is great, how good are trains? I'm like, that's awesome. The 2-year-old's into it as well. I know the trains don't have tyres, I'm going to kick the wheels on that.
Well, it should be pretty easy this week to have a starting 5 on doubles. You've got 6 teams out of the 10 on doubles. And I want to give a shout out to the people that did well this week. We had a tie again at the top at 460. We had CG3 for Kylie. A very big New Zealand and Tassie theme here. And some of the ones at the bottom, they had all Tassie and New Zealand teams, which are all teams that came off doubles. So an exciting time for these players. PJC is captain and 5 times New Zealand Breakers players for Kylie. Unbelievable setup. The Heartbreakers with Sarah, she also tied for 60. PJC as captain and Magne as vice captain. We had Tubby Power, my favourite name of the week, for Tanya, 453. She only missed out by 7. Only Taz and New Zealand players in the starting 5. Limitless Potential for Callum, 446. Only Taz and New Zealand in the whole team, so across the starters and the bench. And for Morgs, 446, and she was the same. All players in Taz and New Zealand. So an exciting time for those people. Very double game centric.
I love that. Tubby Power was also I'm pretty sure that was my nickname, playing power forward for Ballarat High School. Like it's like, or at least that was the nickname for the opposition teams. Like, get Tubby Power, done.
The girls are flying the flag there too. I think that nearly whole list were all girls, wasn't it?
Except for Callum, yeah, flying the flag. Well done, females in this trade. Most traded in, let's get to that. We've spoken a little bit about SEM and the players there. Matt Hurt, I have stuck fat with him the whole time. Absolutely love him as a player, no secret there. Angus Glover comes in as one of the most traded, 10.7% of SuperCoaches, and he's sitting at 101,300. Mick, what do you think about that? You really like the Glover in, don't you?
Well, had a lot of focus on the Phoenix over the past couple of weeks, obviously because of everything that's gone on. And one of the things that Sammy Mack said in the press conference after the game on Sunday was that Matty Hurt's our guy. We're going to feature him every game. We're going to play through him. So, like, he's just rolled gold. I think, you know, he's your number one trade option. But the glove, I think he had 8. He sort of came in for D. Walder and had 8 assists, you know, after quarter time or something. And my mail's not always bang on, but I'm hearing that there's a potential for him to either start or handle the ball a lot again in these games this weekend. So he's been a bit of a trap, and I did think he was a trap at the start of the season because they are loaded at guard, but this might be the week to bring him in and really make some cash.
Yeah, JC, there's another on this list that you wanted to talk about, which was Max Darling. You were excited about him and the most traded in.
I'm excited about the price. 91k, let's go. He's been great for the Breakers so far. Can you trust it, Mick? That's going to be my big question. He's probably going to come into my team with the Breakers sort of like just to make me a little bit of cash. If I'm boosting, he's probably the 3rd player that I have traded in. So I'm just like going into this one fingers crossed, much the same as I'll get to my team later on in the show. My team should basically just be the fingers crossed team. I'm just hoping. I'm just all hope. It's basically a Star Wars movie. But Max Darling, what do you reckon about him?
If you can, like, if you're looking to get off, say, a Henschel or a Pepper, like some of those guys that are just hovering around that price and not sure of roles, like obviously Wildcats are very interesting with what happens with Bryce, so you might want to wait and see. But at 91k, he's probably the best cheapie at the price, and I mean, it looks like Capone absolutely loves him, right? He looks like a beast on the court, isn't he? He's just a Hulk. So he's played really well. So does he hold his spot?
Yeah, so the most traded out, the obvious ones are Harrell and Kendrick Davis. They go into a string of single games. There's Kelly Leaupepe and Cam Oliver on there, and Will Magne. Talk to me about that, JC.
So Leaupepe is a fascinating one, I reckon. His break even is 38. They're on the double. His average, Mick, what is it? 18, 19. So
18, mate.
He just has to hit his average, and we're laughing. And we sort of hit on this at times previously. He has this ability just to rip off a random double-double.
Yep.
And we know in SuperCoach, that's extra points. Like, let's go. So if he can get a 10-10, we're laughing. He gives you these extraneous points as well. It's not just points and rebounds. He's the guy out there getting random steals. He's getting these blocks. Like, he is the sort of guy where he's made you a lot of money already, so I can see why people are jumping off. Like, they're cashing out because his break-even it does look high. It's 38. But I think he can hit it. So I'm not that afraid of Kelly. And the same thing with Space Cam. Like, Cam Oliver's break-even's 60. But we've seen him hit 30s. He's got the potential. I'm not afraid to sort of lose that much money though, but like Will the Thrill, Trez and Davis, like, yeah, that all makes sense with all those sort of teams on singles.
Well, let's move to the teams that have doubles, and you've spoken about Kelly and Cam. They're coming into a week where they have doubles. There's 6 teams, like we mentioned before, coming into doubles. Southeast Melbourne United, Sydney, Illawarra, Cairns and New Zealand. You've obviously said that you're going to stick fat with PJC, New Zealand Breakers teams. Any of those players from those teams, Sydney, Illawarra, Cairns, Southeast Melbourne United, that you're interested in that we haven't spoken about?
Well, it's like I sort of brought up the idea of United. Like, I'm going full Bon Jovi with Jack White. I'm keeping the faith.
Yep.
Sometimes you just got to keep the faith, right? And he's fine. The tricky one for me is though Bubbles. Like Goulding, I brought him in last week as a bit of a Hail Mary for some points. Yeah, that didn't work out, so that sucked. But because they've got the doubles, I'm like, that's fine. I can keep him. I don't have to worry about a trade. And then with Shea Lee out this week, I feel a little bit better about that. The tricky part's going to be like going, right, how much do you trust that United backcourt? How much do you trust Jaylen Adams? And Cairns, because it's only the one double, Illawarra, only this one double as well, I'm kind of just very wary of that. So that's why Hurt's probably the obvious candidate. DeWalt would have been the obvious one as well until he got hurt too. So it gets very, very tricky from here on out, I reckon.
Yeah, Mick, I've spoken about the 6 teams playing. You weren't sure when you came in here about what you were going to do. Are you any clearer now on what you've got and maybe the moves that you're making this week?
No, I'm still not sure. I reckon I've hit trade and reverse 20 times so far. I really want to get Matt Hurt, but then how do I balance my backcourt if I have to get rid of Walton Jr. and Adams? I don't know how it works, and then I don't have enough money to get up to PJC and get another elite guard alongside him, so I've got major problems.
For me personally, I've jumped straight on the Angus Glover. I'm part of this list. I've got Angus Glover in this week. JC, is there any moves that you're making that you haven't mentioned so far?
Well, I'm just going to go straight from Trez to Hurt. That's pretty straightforward. And I've also got Mayan for Darling. So it's like, I can do that pretty easily. My thing is like, I will spend over under probably about 48 hours for the rest of this week reversing trades, trying to somehow make it that if I use a boost and we're using somebody else in, that I've got Hurt in there, and he's like the sort of dude that I'm bringing him straight in because I'm going to cap him in as well, right? So I think outside of that, it's going to be Hurt. I'm going to try to move heaven and earth to get Cooks in, and then maybe Max Darling. I just don't know if I'm going to have the cash. So, but yeah, Hurt's the obvious one for me.
Well, you can do all of that reverse trading, spend 48 hours on there if you need to at supercoach.com.au. You can also go to the NBL app across the weekend and get the live scores. There's lots of latest news, tips, tricks, everything that you need at supercoach.com.au. That's where I spend a lot of my time. But I want to get finally to your captains and your vice captains. For me, my captain is remaining as PJC. I feel like that's the very obvious one. My vice captain is Xavier Cooks. I'm very lucky to have those two that you've mentioned. JC, let's get to you, captain, vice captain.
Yeah, it's going to be Hurt or PJC. And like, this is the thing, I'm just going to go back and forth the entire time, looking at matchups, trying to figure out how it's going to go. PJC's got, like, I don't know, those games that the Breakers have, Mick, this week. You sort of look at the schedule and you're trying to sort of just, you look at the matchups, you look at just that potential that they have to go absolutely bang the same way the PJC did last week. And because they start off against Phoenix, I feel like PJC is pretty good, but at the same time, so is Hurt. So it's a really tricky one. I'd probably still lean Hurt. I feel like his floor of like that 35 makes me feel pretty good. Whereas PJC, a lot of that was like, we saw a lot of steals. He didn't shoot great last week, but he sort of bumped up his price a lot. Bumped up his score a lot with like a lot of extraneous stuff. So Hurt might be my guy.
I really like Hurt too. I've had him as captain once already this year. I think I've mentioned that last week, but I'm going to stick with Jack White. Angry Jack White is who I'm sticking with. I reckon I watched him at the end of the game on Sunday and I just saw his face. He was so angry with that loss and the way it all went down. I reckon he's going to come out and just be absolutely fired up, and he might reel off a couple of double-doubles over the weekend and give us a massive score. So I'm going to stick with him.
I was really fascinated with that matchup between Jack White and Matt Hurt. They were going at each other, ex-teammates. I was fascinated by it. So I think Jack White's a great one. He's currently on my bench as well. Thank you so much for joining us again, guys. You always give me something to think about, something to go away and change my SuperCoach teams. All the best for your round this week. Mick, I feel like you've got a lot more work than the two of us to do, but that's okay. I trust you. For all of you at home, all the best for your round 6 effort in SuperCoach, and join us next week for another episode of The Panel.